start?
Yeah, I've started now.
Got it. Now I got to figure out when 50 seconds is.
Yeah, let's see how good your math is.
You know how to
Wait.
take turns and count
I'm
backwards.
watching. I'm
As a
watching.
producer, Bob and I are going to negotiate.
You guys
that up
cue
and
me.
round up.
You guys cue me. All right. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't nervous until everybody got so
I
quiet.
know. So I'm still seeing these other guys on the screen. I'm assuming they're either going to disappear or are you guys seeing more than just the three of us?
Well, I see a top line, and on that
Yeah.
top line, I got Gabe up there. I got Vanessa,
Oh, you
Ali,
do?
Sue,
Okay.
Harry,
Okay.
and
I think in the
Bob.
broadcast it's not going to be there. I think we may still see it on our Zoom link. So I
Okay.
don't know if we can change there.
Okay.
So.
I think we're close to 50 seconds in. I guess we're ready to go. Gabriel, I'm going to get started. Okay, we're ready. I got my notes.
There you go.
Good deal. Hello, everybody, and welcome today to the Independent Filmmaking Hacks, hosted by Film Capital, Cannes 2020 Virtual Conference. And we have two very esteemed filmmakers with us today, Harry Lowell and Bob Cook. I'm again going to introduce each of them individually. Some of the things we're going to talk about today are how to collect commitments for A-list actors for your independent film, which is a question all of us would like the answer to. How to plan for optimal distribution strategy, which is incredibly important to know about. If you're going to make a film, you want to know how to get it distributed. And tips to produce top-notch content for under $500,000. A lot of independent filmmakers are working in that budget area, and I think that'll be really important information for them to have. Please let me start by welcoming Harry Lowell, and I'm going to read his bio here. Here we go. Hang on a sec.
Take your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Harry is an award-winning TV and film producer, Television Academy member, and president of Nightlight Pictures in Los Angeles. He is the producer of the powerful documentary film, #WeLegit. Did I pronounce that right, Harry?
No. It's
Okay,
We-
thank you.
It took me a long time to learn it, but I will tell you the story later if you want to hear it.
Okay, I will. Which won Best Documentary at the Maui Film Festival. If you're going to be at a film festival, that's the one to be at. Welcome, Harry.
Thank you, Sue. Thanks for having me.
You bet. And Bob Cook is with us as well, and he is a producer for BC Entertainment. Bob has been producing, directing, and writing in the film and television industry for over 35 years. That's impressive. He began writing and directing in New York for cable television and soon landed a staff job with Viacom. Bob headed west in 1985, where he worked with renowned director Paul Leader. Did I pronounce that right?
You
Okay,
did.
very good. After teaming with Paul for several features, he branched out and began producing, directing, and writing for the screen on his own, and founded his company producing Rocketeye Baby, which was screened at the 1989 Cannes Film Festival. That's pretty impressive, Bob. Welcome.
You know, it just means that I'm old. That's
That's pretty impressive, Bob. 35 years.
a long time. I know. So
It's a
Lot of
always got 'em.
longevity.
I have a lot of things I want to share.
Good. We can't wait to hear from you. And I'm going to start out. What we're going to do is we're going to visit with the guys for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And we've got some questions we're going to ask them. And as our audience is listening, if you have a question for either one of them, please let us know. Well, I'll see it in the comments in the last 15 or 20 minutes or so. We'll do a Q&A for sure. But if we see any questions along the way that we want to have them visit about, we'll insert those. But Bob, let me start with you. The question I have that I would like to know personally is how to make a quality film for $500,000. What tips can you give us for that?
Oh, indeed. What I recommend is that a producer director watch a low budget film and find out or look at it and decide or decipher what's wrong with it. Is there bad sound? Is there bad acting? Is there bad music? Is there bad camera work? Because those are the things that stand out the most in a low budget film. And the key to making a low budget film is not to look like a low budget film. You should have a cost to production value ratio of anywhere from 6 to 10 to 1, which means that if you're spending a dime, it better look like you spent a dollar.
That's some good advice, Bob. I appreciate that. I'm sure we'll have some questions about that from our audience here too, again, very, very soon. Harry, let me ask you this question. What things would you not overlook or scrimp on when making a $500,000 film?
It's funny, Bob really has a keen eye on that's the best advice I've heard is the way Bob just summarized everything. And the thing you definitely can't skimp on is the audio. People always end up working so hard on their budget, on their cast line, on their crew line, and they end up forgetting that music and recording audio on set and the mix and the score is super important, because if you start to cut that portion of the budget down to nothing, which is what usually happens in low budget films, people start to go, well, I'll deal with that later. I'm just going to put all my money here. You end up with a film that is tragic. And and when Bob said, take a look at those movies, especially listen to the soundtrack, listen to the way they recorded the audio. That stuff will immediately take you out of the moment. You're no longer in the magic. When the sound and the audio and the music don't match anything, you are done with that story. And in today's world, as soon as someone hates or doesn't like a film, either whether it's low budget or high budget, they go on their Twitter, they go on their socials, and your film is doomed. So you cannot scrimp on the audio and assume that that's something you'll just pick up later or figure out. I think that obviously everything's important, but people seem to always forget about that line item and just kind of cross it out.
That's a very good tip, because music, especially a score or original music, can change everything about a story. From beginning to end, and the opening is as important as the ending. So that is some brilliant advice. Anything else we should not overlook, Harry, when we're making a film?
I think, and I'd love to get Bob's opinion on this too, is I think you also have to take an opportunity and look at your film in terms of from a marketing perspective. And, people look through and say, well, I can't afford that stunt, or I can't afford that particular thing, so I'm going to cut it out because it's going to save me money. I think you also have to look and go, what's making your film special and unique? And it doesn't have to necessarily be one scene or one action, but I think you need to look at it and say, it's important that that scene tells the story or connects our audience. And it's the kind of scene that I can use in a trailer or a promo that will draw people in. So sometimes you have to go, I've got to figure out a way to keep that action bit in, or that, sexy romance piece in that I couldn't get the right actor for. You have to figure out a way sometimes to save the things that are crucial to the story. So I think a lot of times people look at 500,000 budget or whatever their limit is to their low budget, and they start cutting scenes, they start cutting locations, they start cutting audio and things that they don't think about that come in the editorial phase. And I think you have to make sure that you're not chopping something that is going to be part of the story, but also that's going to sell it down the road. Sometimes those scenes, getting one boom, and I want Bob to talk about this too, is, you could rent a boom. I remember when we were first starting doing film stuff, you'd rent a boom, you couldn't afford it, but you need those big things. They add value to your film. So if you rent it on a Friday, you don't have to return it till Monday. So you can get 3 days out of rental when you're a kid and you're young. So you got 3 days to do boom shots, and you cram them all together. And those are the stuff that make it into the trailer, because you got these booming shots going up, and suddenly your film looks bigger. To Bob's point, you've got to not look like a low budget film. You have to look like a film I want to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Bob, do you want to add something?
Well, I think the most important part for the director, for example, because the director, in my opinion, is the person that shares all the credit and takes all the blame. He needs to become very creative. So like the shots that Harry was speaking about, for example, a dolly shot, you got to move the camera, move the actors, and the dolly shot is so beautiful, but nobody knows that you have a dolly. You can use a wheelchair. You can use, I used a shopping cart one time too. It was a little noisy, but you do what you got to do to get the shot that you want. But you've got to be creative. You've got to sit down with your team and say, how can we get that look? Okay, we need this stunt. How do we make this stunt work for the amount of money that we have? Because again, how much is that stunt going to bring to your production value? And if it costs you $1,000, that stunt might bring $10,000 worth of production value to your film.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And it's such a collaborative process that sometimes some of the other crafts can come up with ideas that enhance, your final thing. And with that in mind, Bob, talk to us a little bit about the director's responsibility, kind of from beginning to end. A bird just hit the window. Talk to us a little bit about
terrible luck, Sue.
Well, it hit her window and I ducked.
at the farm, guys. So talk a little bit about a director's, both of you guys, but let's start with Bob. Talk about a director's responsibility, the visionary and all of that, almost from the beginning to the end, and address sort of the independent filmmaking from the perspective of a director.
Well, for 12 years, I ran the Central Florida Film Festival, and I saw a lot of films come in and a lot of directors. And the directors seem to want to do everything. And when I say do everything, I call it the Bugs Bunny syndrome. If you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon, where Bugs Bunny played first base, second base, third base, shortstop, they want to produce, direct, write, star in, work the boom, work the sound, edit. They don't have a second set of eyes to tell them, no, that's not good. And you need to surround yourself with not only people that you trust, but people that are creative enough to be trusted to make your film better, so that you can turn around and get those other ideas, and then you can bump your ideas off of your crew, and the crew turns around and says, yeah, that'd be great. Or why don't we try it this way? Or they have an idea and you say, I like that idea. Could we do it this way? It's a team effort, even though the director is the one in charge of the team.
Correct. And the vision.
Yeah.
For sure. Harry?
When you hire a crew, when you hire a crew, you need to make sure your crew is on that same vision as you are, but that's during the interview process and things like that. But absolutely. Harry?
Yep. Harry?
I think that no matter what kind of film you're making, I think really, Bob's opening summary was really important. It's the story is what's important. Whether you're spending $1 billion or $100, there have been films that have been done on shoestrings that, Clerks as an example, that still resonate today because they cared about the story, they cared about the characters, and if you have to have the director focused on the right things. And I think Bob had a really good point about grabbing a wheelchair. You have to be a director without an ego, especially when you're working low budget, because you need to get everyone rallied together. You don't have the money to have all the toys and bells and whistles. So how do you get the shot? And is that shot going to help tell that story? Or are you just wasting a ton of time to get a shot that's not really enhancing the storyline? So you don't have the ability to have a big ego. You really want someone who is committed to the story, committed to the casting, committed to the characterizations of things, because then that story is going to come alive. And when you have to do that dolly shot, it's going to pay off. Everyone works together because they all want to make that shot. And I love, my favorite part of this business is the collaboration. The DP had a great idea. The gaffer had a great idea. Sometimes, the talent, the producer, the editor who might be on set that day, they all have ideas that, a good director should be able to hear some of those and take the ones that are better than what he thought, because all of us contribute to that storyline, especially when you're working in a low budget scenario, in which case you have to be a little more flexible. You have to be able to see what's happening and be in the moment and not be so. One big thing for me is if you're so locked into what you decided 2 months ago during pre-production, you're not going to be able to see the magic in front of you. And sometimes an actor is doing something, or now you're on location and something smells and looks different. And if you aren't willing to be in the moment and say, hey, you know what's better than all the shit we planned back in Los Angeles or Florida? This is now way better. You have to be willing to jump into that and know that it enhances the story. And if everyone's on the same page and they're following someone who has a good vision, then you can make those kind of quick adjustments and the story becomes stronger and better, and the cast starts to gel even more so. And that's why I think it's important that, for me, I don't hire and look at people just by their reels. It's really important for me to talk to their agents, their reps, people they've worked with in the past, actors, to find out what are they like. If you're a douchebag, that's not going to work, especially with film. You have to figure out, I hope this is R-rated in this Cannes festival. It is. So you have to make sure that those people can, play the game, and you're working crazy hours, and you want to be passionate about it as opposed to being difficult. And I think it's really, when you find the right people who have the right commitment to that particular script and that storyline, you're going to have everyone following them eagerly, because they all get to do their craft. The audio, the set designers, everyone gets to play in that world.
Yep.
I have something to add to that. Yes, I do. Harry, I agree with everything you said. It was wonderful. There were just two things. One, when you said bring your ideas to the set, what I like to do is have my meetings the night before
Mhm.
so that we talk about it, discuss it. So once we're on the set, time is money. So
Mhm.
I don't need a debate. I don't need the ideas at that time. They have their chance to give me their ideas at a meeting before, and generally I'll
Yeah.
spice the meeting up with either a drink or with, depending on whether we're on location or not, dinner or
Mhm.
something along that. So you get that. And what was the other one? What was the last thing you were talking about, Harry?
I think it was the everyone following the director on that vision. I'm not quite sure if that's how I ended it there.
Kind of working with good people.
Oh,
and
no,
networking with
the interview
them.
process, the interview
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's okay to call other people, but who knows whether that director was a douchebag, as you would call him, or not. And I like to sit with the person or talk to the person directly to see if he looks me in the eye, to see if he's personable, to see if we're going to get along, to
Mhm.
find out his ideas and things that he's done. What was his best experience on a set? What was his worst experience on the set? If he's rookie, what did you learn in film school? What was your favorite part of it? Just to see how likable we are going to be together. Because if we're
Yeah.
already banging heads, then
Yeah.
what good is having them on the set? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But if you're getting
Makes
along
sense.
right away and you're on the same page, chances are I'm going to be able to get my vision across to him. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm.
I think it's a
Yes.
really good point. Just to riff on that, what Bob was saying, all those key crew members are really important because you
Yeah.
are going to form a family and a relationship. And especially in low budget films, you don't have the ability to have, 100 crew members and people in between stuff and to handle everyone's idiosyncrasies. You need people
Mhm.
to be willing to get up early, go late,
To
maybe.
be on task. Yeah.
Yeah. So, they have to really be good people committed to that project. And to
Mhm.
Bob's point, I think that's why it was really important for me to make sure that everybody gels and that I have a relationship with them, that I've heard good
Yeah.
things about them. So I know that when shit hits the fan, as it always
Mhm.
does at some point, that we can count on them to be as, part of the team as possible to get us through
Yes.
that scenario.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
keep
For the
vision.
team rather than not for the team.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, talking about our collaborative efforts, Bob and both of you guys talk a little bit about how do we get an A-list talent interested in your project?
All right. Harry,
That's a
can I
great
start?
question.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. The best way is to have money. And when I say have money, you have to have development money. You can't just walk into a project, poor as a church mouse, and say, I got a script. Because I'm telling you, the Uber driver that drives you over to the meeting has a script. Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody's got a script and everybody thinks they can make a movie.
Mhm.
You have got to have development money. And part of that development money is so that you can call up an agent and you can say, hey, I want, and I'm going to give you for example, Nicolas Cage. You call up Nicolas Cage's agent, and it happened with a movie called The Wrestler. If you guys remember the movie, Academy Award for Mickey Rourke. Well, Mickey Rourke wasn't the first choice. Nicolas Cage was. And the reason they were able to get to Nick Cage was because the guy had some money to attach to the script to get Nick Cage to read the script.
Mm.
He read the script. He passed on it, but he turned around and said, you know what? I got a good buddy that might be interested in this. I'm going to pass it on to Mickey Rourke. And that's how Mickey Rourke got involved.
Mhm.
It's the same principle. If you have development money, don't be afraid to call up an agent and say, hey, look, I'm a serious filmmaker. I want this A-list actor to play this project. I think he's perfect for the role. I'm sending you a script and I'm sending you a check for $10,000.
Okay.
See if he's interested.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
So Bob, if one did that, would you feel confident that the script would be read by the A actor?
Nowadays,
kind of-
yeah, more nowadays than the old days, but yes, I would.
Okay.
And the reason for that is they're taking money, so they have to really do that. And
Yeah.
if the agent likes it, even if the agent reads it first and the agent passes on it, that's okay. But
Okay.
if you really and truly believe that the actor you're trying to get is good for that role, he'll pass it on to that actor.
Okay.
And the actor's either going to say, yeah, I really like this. Well, then that goes you into the next step. The next step is they're going to call your bluff. They're going to say, when do you want to start? Well, you have to have all your other
Right.
excuse me, ducks in a
Financing
row.
ready and all that.
Well, you got
Yeah.
to have your financing, but you got to have a start date because then you
Yeah,
got to
got
put up a pay or play contract. Now that
Okay.
$10,000 that you've spent for a deposit, that can be applied to his first week's salary. So
Okay,
it's not like you're out of
interesting.
the money.
Okay.
It's all
Look at
part
him.
of it.
Is that kind of a ballpark? I mean, you just threw $10,000 out there. Is
No,
that
that's because
just
that's all I have right now. But
that's a random amount? Sounds like a fair amount.
you
How about
never
you,
know
Harry?
who's watching. You know what I'm saying?
Harry, what about you? What are your thoughts?
So another great way too, and what Bob is saying is accurate. That's the way to really, that's the most surefire way to get stuff, and that's the only way this town operates, right? They are
Okay.
gatekeepers that you have to go through in order to get that to them. The other thing you can also do, and these things have worked for me in the past as well, is if you have to, like a puzzle, you have to figure out how you want to get to this piece. It's that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon type thing, right? So if you want to get to a particular actor, you might say, well, look, have you read anything about him that he would love to work with this actress, or does this actress, like Nicolas Cage, was from a very, very famous family? So you would have to, you can also look at it and go, well, if I get this actress interested and she knows Nicolas Cage or she knows Kevin Hart, could that interest him, and could she make the phone call? Or a director. Sometimes we've gone with a director and we'd said, hey, he was perfect for the scenario. And we're like, what about this? He's like, oh yeah, I know him. Let me make the phone call to his manager. I don't want to blow my personal relationship. But a lot of times you can find personal ways in, but a lot of it becomes the most important thing is, what's your story? You're not going to get an A-list actor to get a storyline that's not, to your point, like you have to have good development. It has to be something they're passionate about. So it has to be, he's always wanted to do an action film and he's cast as a romantic lead. Here's his chance. I'm giving it to you. You're a serious guy. I'm going to give you a chance to do a comedy. You have to offer them something that they're like, oh, I see why. And then tell me another reason, because I don't want to look like a fool on camera. So they don't want to hear about possibly a first-time director, or they don't know who the rest of the cast members are. Find other things, because when they are A-list, they have everything. They have all the choices, all the scripts, all the directors. So unless you have an interesting package and cash, it's very difficult for anyone to push it. So find a different approach so that they can say, you know what, no one's offering me this opportunity, and with her or with him, and this director, she's wonderful. I've never worked with her. So find an opportunity.
Do some research. Yeah.
That's really, and it's really exciting, because then they are more committed than just dollars.
Yeah.
They're committed because they're like, you might say, hey, I'm going to do an all-female cast with an all-female director with an all-female. And suddenly like, you know what? I'm fucking interested now.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be something I do. Yeah. Yeah. Bob, anything in addition to that?
Well, yes, from the entertainment side of it, there was a story that's been handed down, and now our listeners can, or what viewers can listen to this story as well. There was a gentleman, and I can't remember his name, but he wrote a script many years ago, and he knew that Peter Lawford used to jog every morning at 6 a.m. at Malibu. And what he did was he would go down every morning at 6 a.m. and jog. Sometimes he'd ask Peter and say good morning. Sometimes it just took him weeks until finally Lawford said, hey, you want coffee? Yeah, sure. And it was Lawford that made the approach. Yeah. And they went out and he didn't pitch it then. Later, they had their coffee. Next day they met, they did their jog, they went for coffee. And then all of a sudden Lawford said the magic word. So what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm a writer. He says, do you have anything I would like? And he says, yeah, tomorrow I'll bring it. And he goes, okay. And he brought him Ocean's 11. And Peter Lawford brought the script to Sinatra. And of course, it became a movie. But this guy invested months in his ploy of how to get it to set up a relationship with Peter Lawford. And that's a true Hollywood old school way to do it.
There's some good stories out there connected to that for sure. That was some great advice, guys. Thanks a lot. Let's talk a little bit about distribution. And once we have our A-list actor and our $500,000 film in the can, how do you sell or market those films in today's digital economy? Bob or Harry, either one, both of you guys. One's laughing.
Last time.
One's laughing.
Well,
go ahead, Harry, because you probably have a better
Harry.
answer than I do.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's
if I go second, they'll remember me. So you should go.
There you go.
Mine is, if you have the A-list actor, you get yourself a distributor that'll do some pre-sales off of that actor's name. I mean, that's the way I would go. But
you do that on the front end, Bob.
But to me, old school, yes, I would.
Yeah.
Because you've already got the actor tied down with
Signed.
the deposit, right?
Yeah.
So he's there, and now you can use his name as opposed to not having him tied down, and you're
Yeah.
just using his name illegally to raise money. Here, the
Right.
distributor turns around, he goes to like AFM or goes to Con and
Yep.
turns around, shoot. Hey, Ginger.
You're still on anyways.
Oh,
We
I
can
am
see you.
good. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
you're
just
still
spilled-
good.
I just spilled
still
water
good.
all over myself and I can't see anybody, so I'm doing this blind. But basically, I'm calling my tech staff in, is that, there we are. You turn around and pre-sell, and they can pre-sell off the
Gotcha.
name. They know what territories, Nicolas Cage or Jean-Claude Van Damme. I just finished a meeting at AFM last year, and they wanted Jean-Claude Van Damme. They said his money, and I thought he was, kind of over the hill, for crying out loud. He was big when I was just starting out. And they turned around and said, no, he's still money in the bank in the foreign market. So
Okay, yeah.
Jean-Claude is money in the bank. And they kept
Gotcha.
saying that, money in the bank. I go, okay,
Yeah.
fine. I wanted to direct, but Van Damme wanted to use his own set of like 4 or 5 directors. So then I had my choice. Do I want the project made, or do I want to direct
Yeah.
this
Which
project?
which did you choose?
I went with get the project made,
Yeah.
right? But that's another story. I should have pushed, but anyhow, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Harry,
There you go. There you go. Harry, you're up.
Let me say 2
clean
things,
up on
right?
aisle
So
4 here.
one is if you have an A-list talent, it's going to make
Yeah.
things a lot easier, right? So
Yes.
let's go with that first quick scenario.
Mhm.
You're going to have a lot of agents, a lot of distributors, pre-sales agents, all looking at that particular film, and I think that's going to be very helpful. If you have a $500,000 film and you're not coming from a major studio, it's going to be more difficult to grab their attention, regardless of who's in it and the content. So I think
Right.
producers need to, especially in today's day and age, you cannot rely on the distributor the way you used to, because there aren't just simple paths. You don't just go theatrical. A couple months later, you're going to roll out here, then you're going to roll out there, then you're going to be on free TV. It's not that way anymore. So social media has changed that. Fandom has changed that. The streamers have changed that. So ultimately, what you need to, in my opinion, especially for low budget, you need to be more involved in your distribution and know what's marketable, what's sellable in your films. Take a more dramatic hand in terms of, what we've done is cut trailers, go to people and show the distributors not just the film, but show them how you can market it. Because that's just as important as sometimes you can, the marketing can be very impressive and really jaw-dropping if you put it together in the right way. And sometimes we've actually bid to pay for that and show that, so they would see the film, but also see how it could be marketed, and that changed their tone. They're like, oh, I see this could be an adult male or a female skewing film. So that's an important element that you have to get involved with. And one other thing that is, I think, really helpful when you're in low budget, you now have opportunities to do things that are part distribution and part financing. So one of the big things that's been really interesting, and I spoke on this last year at Cannes, was crowdsourcing. And so once you have your stuff in play, kind of like what Bob was saying, is there's kind of a game element. So let's say you got your money and you get your actor, if it's A or B level, whatever it is. Now it's about to happen. You can now do a crowdsourcing, and people will now flood going, oh my God, I love her, I love him, I love this group. And you now have this built-in audience that you're generating, and now you already maybe have your $500,000 or whatever your budget is. Your crowdsourcing might bring in a tiny little cap on top of it, but the crowdsourcers think they're actually funding your film when you're already funded. But now you got extra money to throw towards your audio or your editing, and you now have a built-in audience. So now your distributors, like, you already have these hundreds of thousands of people who have committed to your film. They already are out there talking about your film. They've committed pennies and dollars to your film. So now you have a much better chance to cut a better deal with your distributor, because you're already bringing more to
an audience
distributor than just a low budget film. You're bringing something that has an audience, that had some extra money raised. They're excited to see it. So the more you can generate on your own, I think the better it is. And the more you can play in this social world, and I think be a part of it, let people see behind the scenes, take some opportunities to have things to promote. And hopefully, if you have a talent that really likes the property, they will take an interest in doing some social media, because that will also spark. They know that they're going to get a big boost from that talent talking about it, posting behind the scenes, or whatever you've committed to in the contract with them.
It's a different world, isn't it, making films in today's social media?
I love it. It's all connected now. We
all interactive.
You don't just hand it off and hope it works for the best. Now
I know.
see what's
Bob,
happening.
I think you have something more you'd like to add, it looks like.
Yeah, I have a producer, of award-winning producer friend of mine who is actually out in the audience, Gary Toll, and he told me the same thing that Harry was saying. Just took it a little step further. We were discussing it, and I'm kind of old school. I'll call up a distributor that's already made me money, and
Yeah.
hopefully they'll make me money again.
Mhm.
And he said that now, and we got started on this 2 films ago with social media, and it was like,
Yeah.
I always had a closed set. I didn't want anybody taking pictures. I didn't want anybody
Yeah.
posting anything. But now everybody's got to post something, because
Yeah.
the more followers you get, and then when you set up a
know
Facebook
it.
page, and on the
Yeah.
Facebook page, you put little things that you did today,
Yeah.
and people start following it. And next thing you know, you've got 200, 300, 400,000 people that are following
Yeah.
your film, and
Yeah.
that's some leverage with a distributor. So.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
It's building your audience from day one,
Absolutely.
basically,
Yeah.
on social media, today's
Who'd have
world.
thought?
Yeah.
But that's today's society. Absolutely.
I know it. And who
You
knows
have
what
to
the
make
next 10 years will bring.
You have to make the film very appealing for a distributor, and then you also have better control over your negotiating. If you're
Yeah.
just sending them a film like everybody else,
Right.
it's the same way when you pitch television or films. If you're asking for the full amount and you're just dropping it in their lap and they have to do all the heavy lifting, but if you already have a lot of momentum, you have more control over
Of course.
what deal you can make and how
Yeah.
they're going to promote it, and you can even be more
Gotcha.
aggressive, less so even on the dollars, but more
Yeah.
so on, I want more PR, I want more of this. Can you
Gotcha.
contribute that? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times we aren't even asking for a better financial deal. We just want
Mhm.
more visibility to it, because we believe that the film, if it gets out there, will connect to an audience, will make us money
Yeah.
and help everyone's career. So we'd rather trade in terms of guaranteeing us press and promos and
Mhm.
interviews, as opposed to even a better percentage sometimes.
Yeah. It's interesting. All right, let me move on to, let's talk about crowdfunding a little bit, or crowdsourcing. I guess we did kind of just talk about that a little bit, but in making a small, low budget film, or this is maybe even low budget at $500,000. First of all, where does one find the money? Well, a lot of people try the crowdsourcing or the crowdfunding, and that yields smallish amount unless you have some attachment to it. But let's talk a little bit about where. We've talked about incentives a little bit, Bob, in some of the different states and stuff like that. Let's talk about the really critical question of, where does the money come from?
Well, I'm not very good at crowdfunding, because you have to have a
Yeah.
lot of friends and family, and
Yeah.
and I don't. I barely have 6 pallbearers. But I'll pass to
Okay.
Harry, because Harry
Okay.
seems to have been
It's a big question.
worked with them.
Yeah.
Well, most of the stuff that I have has come in the form of people looking for tax incentives. So
Yeah.
most of it's come from independent sources. When you're doing this kind of price point, right? When you're looking for millions of dollars, then you're going to different kind of consortiums. You're going to different kind of groups who are who are very what's the word?
Savvy and
Savvy investors. They know
financial.
what they're
Yeah.
looking for. When you're doing it at this kind of price point, what I've found is it's a little bit different. These people are willing to take more of a risk. Some of them want to have the quick title of executive producer. A lot of them
Yeah.
are. What I found is, like, through one of my Linda Mensch is an amazing attorney, and she has had clients that are former sports athletes and
Mhm.
people who are looking for tax incentives. We found we get better
Ah.
dollars at the end of the year, because they know that their taxes are coming up and they want to dump it before December 31st. So we
Yeah.
found that there's cycles of things when you're looking for individuals looking to invest dollars, because you don't have the
Gotcha.
same kind of package to present on a $500,000 film. If you have
Right.
an A-list person or whatever, but you cannot present a $500,000 project to an investor and say, you're going to make back millions. It's irresponsible. It's not
Mhm.
accurate. Some
Mhm.
things
Mhm.
do, but the reality is you have to be somewhat honest, and the lawyers will keep you
Yeah.
honest. So
Yeah.
ultimately, for me, what we really found is it's been individuals. As when we get into larger dollar numbers, then we're talking corporations. We're doing consortiums of people who understand and they want to see a full prospectus on the film.
Yeah.
So when you're doing something as small as 500,000, and that's quite small in today's numbers,
Yeah.
you have to really, from my experience, and I think Bob may have more opportunities out of Florida because I'm based in California, so I don't get to have some of the benefits of, I know people have done that easier in like Louisiana and other places where they can roll their own tax incentives into it. And you have to make a good proposal to your investor and say, here's all the ways we're trying to make the best film, to get the best distribution and the best financial way to move forward. So we're being as economical as possible, but still
Mhm.
putting the value on the screen. And I think that is,
Yeah.
I've found easier for people who live in states where there are better incentives, New Mexico,
Yeah.
Louisiana, things like that. And it's
Mhm.
in smaller amounts of money. So that makes it a little more difficult for the independent producer because you're dealing with more investors
Yeah.
than on a big film. You know, it's funny is on a bigger film, you may have just one big ass investor, and it's a lot easier to deal with that one lawyer and that one individual, and everything's
Mhm.
very, straightforward. Whereas in the
Streamlined.
small one, I
Yeah.
found we had to piece it together more,
Mhm. Yeah.
the lower it is, and that makes it harder sometimes.
Yeah. Bob, anything to add to that?
Well, number one, you mentioned incentives for Florida. Florida does not have incentives. However, I do not want to chase people away from making films in Florida. I did my last projects, which is called Screen Test, still editing as we speak. It's a project that we went to a company called Dolphin Imaging Studios in Winter Haven, Florida.
Mhm.
And it used to be Patterson Studios back in the 60s. And, they got a sound stage, they got a back lot, they had everything. And he turned around and looked at the script and said, yeah, we can make this film. And everything I needed, they had lights, it was almost like a complete below the line deal
Mhm.
for incentive money. He created his own incentives. And
I
that's,
see.
you may or may not find companies like that, but remember, it's
Mhm.
Dolphin Image Studios in
Got it.
Winter Haven, Florida.
Good.
And they helped me a lot, and they're going to help me on my next one too. So
Nice. Best
yeah.
case scenario there.
Yeah, you
Well,
create.
500,000 is a tough number to get. Where would you
Mhm.
find that, Bob? Like that number is very difficult. It's easier to raise bigger money, to be honest. But you have to have a lot of attachments to it because the larger money's out there. The larger money
Mhm.
doesn't always want to have a particular stake in a smaller film. So you have to find a very unique investor who's willing to
Mhm.
roll the
Yeah.
dice a little more, play ball, believe in your package. But
Right.
where have you found it
Agree.
at that price?
I agree to a point, but at the same time, the risk is lower because they're not risking 1 to 5 or $5 to $10 million.
Yeah.
They're risking
Yeah.
$200,000, $300,000.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
return is easier. And
Mhm.
when I say easier, you got to have your package together, and your $300,000 film better look like a $3 million film. That's all. So you say, where do you get your money? Well, you go to the off ramp on I-4 here in Florida with a tin cup, and you'll get it
There you
eventually.
go.
It may take
There
a
it
little
is.
longer, but that's good money.
Fitting on your outfit. Oh, you guys, I'm gonna do one more question, and then we'll take questions from our audience that we're getting streaming through here. Bob, talk a little bit about the safety standards and meeting the safety standards and staying within budget. Is that a state by state thing, or?
No, it's right now it's a union thing.
Mhm.
Screen Actors Guild has just completed their contract regarding the changes for COVID. And let's take that low budget $250,000 project, which is now they were generous enough to move it up to a $300,000 project. But there's a lot of idiosyncrasies, I think, that they've added. Some make sense, some don't make sense. The one that made sense to me was, having a nurse that's exclusively for COVID. She takes your temperature when you start the day, make sure everybody's wearing masks that are on the crew, and make sure everything is safe for the actors when they're, I hate to say love scene, but basically they frown upon love scenes now. They even frown upon fight scenes now. So you try and get around that, but you've got to do a lot more planning because there are more expenses. The same thing with meals. They want to separate the cast and the crew as far as meals go, which was one of the things that I didn't understand. And then you ask them questions and they get attitude at you. But it was basically, I don't know why. What if I have 3 or 4 people in the cast? Why do I need to isolate them from the crew? And I get it. We want to keep our social distancing. But, if you have a big place for them to eat, you can do that. So I didn't understand that, but that's one thing that they want. They also they want individual meals and not like the smorgasbord kind of layout, which
no buffet.
Buffet, which is generally cheaper. But I get that,
Yeah. It's in today's world, maybe a year.
Hand sanitizers everywhere, which is great as long as they don't wind up in your shot.
Right. Good point. I'm going to see if I can come up with questions we've got here lined up for you guys. Give me a second here. Q&A. Let's see what we got.
Probably one thing I just want to say, Sue, while you're talking
Sure.
about that, the biggest part about, you know, the COVID thing is obviously none of us want our crew or cast or anybody to get sick or take it home and someone gets ill. We've had someone close to my wife's family pass away from COVID, and, you know, you don't know where that comes from. So nobody wants to do anything that's unsafe. There are a lot of, you know, the unions have put a lot of rules in place, and even the different cities. LA has issued a white paper, which is in addition to the union's rules. So then each county, LA is different than Orange County. So if you're filming in Los Angeles, you've got a lot of things to, and even like the nurse thing is different. You can actually have now location scouts are now taking training to become safety monitors, because now they're doing things where let's say you're on a location, you do everything in one path. So you come in this door, you light, you leave out the back door, and then there's a wipe down crew. So everything takes twice as long. So your things cost more because you're doing less in a day. And then if you have to redo the lighting, you got to move the cast off, because the cast is the only one taking their mask off. That's why SAG is so concerned that they're going to end up being more exposed than the rest of the crew who maintains a mask the whole time. So everyone's got valid concerns, but it definitely falls on the producers and everyone to compensate that. And it's hard because what you can shoot in a day, you can't do now. It's going to take longer. You want the lighting crew to come back and you got to get the cast off because the union requires it. Then the lighting crew circles back around, makes the fix, and then leaves, and they wipe it down again. So it is and the biggest issue we're facing, what we're struggling with, is insurance. So when we're doing a long 20 or 30-day shoot, or we're doing a television series for a couple months, we can't have a director or a primary cast member go down because the insurance won't cover that. And that's been difficult for our films that are not, especially not independently financed. But the ones that are from the studios, they can't take on that risk that they could be shut down for 30 days while a cast member's out. What do we do at that point? So unfortunately, that's been the smaller. We've been able to find things like we're casting couples who are actual couples now. So if you have, when you're casting, you're like, let's find a real husband and wife that could be to play that particular role. Not on saying A-list celebrity stuff, but on certain roles, you start doing that. So there's some workarounds, but it's very difficult to get beyond the insurance scenario for very long schedules. That's the tough part.
I watched a panel yesterday with Larry Namer was on it, and Larry was talking about that you should put 2 weeks of production time into your contingency, or add to your contingency. And granted, that's really not realistic for a $300,000 film, but on the next step up and the bigger budget films, it's almost like self-insuring yourself by having 2 weeks of production contingency. So that was one good thing I picked up yesterday.
All right, well, let's do
4 weeks out.
Let's do some of our questions from our audience here. We've got about 15 minutes left, and here's one to Bob. What are some other cinematography hacks you can use to make a film look more valuable? That's to you, Bob.
Well, let's see. I've used many. I've used the same DP, Francis Grumman, on 23 of my 25 pictures. And we've done everything from the crane shot where I held him by his legs while he was on the roof of a building. We definitely have used everything from a wheelchair, grandma's wheelchair, to a shopping cart, to up in a tree to get that overhead shot effect. You have got to trust your DP. Tell him the shot that you want, and then decide how you're going to make that shot. Remember, the people that are watching, they have no idea what you went through to get that shot. All they know is, wow, that's really cinematically nice. And that's what you want them to say.
As long as it look good. Yeah. That's very helpful.
I don't want to give you all my
no, that's true.
all my tricks, because then you won't.
You can write that in your blog.
There you go.
This looks like another one for you. What are the advantages of running a film festival, and what are some of the challenges?
Well, right now, the challenges are COVID. I got out just in time. I resigned from that 2 years ago and turned it over to somebody else, and he's had all these issues. But when I was running it back then, it was getting the quality. First, you got to get the reputation, because even if you're on a Film Freeway, for example, Film Freeway puts you on a kind of a rookie platform. So you're like 1 to 3 years, but after 3 years, you've been around. So you're a little more experienced, The bugs have gotten out of its way. My first year when we did the Central Florida Film Festival, we had 24 entries. Well, I had to fill 4 days of the Labor Day weekend with 24 entries. So no matter how bad the film was, it had to get in because I had no choice. But I learned, and that's back when I had Without a Box the next year. My wife and I, we went to the AFM, American Film Market, and we went to a seminar there, and the seminar was how to run a film festival, lucky for us. And they had nice panels of all the film festivals that were around, the successful ones, and also Without a Box, which had just started back then. And we got involved with them, and we went from 24 to 111. And then you start snowballing, and then you start gaining reputation. You start adding things, you start bringing guest speakers. And how do you bring guest speakers? Well, I've known a lot of people when I made friends. So I stayed friends with them, invited them in. I did that because I moved to Florida. My parents were sick. I wanted to take care of my parents and still keep my hand in the business. And that's how I did it. Once a year, I would invite distributors in, filmmakers in, other directors, actors, all the people I wanted to keep a network with, I would bring to my festival. So to me, that was an advantage. And that way, when I was able to step aside, I can hit the road running. And I've done 3 films in 3 years. So
wow,
happy.
Awesome. Harry, let's take a question. We talked about the A-list actors. What is one thing that you would consider as method in managing cast and crew on set? Because sometimes, you know, we have pretty big production crew, keeping everybody at their A games. What are your thoughts about that?
So in a creative sense, you mean?
I think so. Yeah. The question is, what is one thing that you would consider as method to manage cast and crew on set?
Not really understanding the question, but you know,
Harry, let me step in here and I'll give you one. For example, you hire 2 PAs. If one PA gives you a hard time, you fire the bad one, and that way the good one will step in line and everybody else will step in line because, oh crap, cook will fire you if you don't toe the line.
Oh God, I hate those kind of things. Yeah.
So making decisions,
I'm
kidding. No,
yeah, my sets are a lot more fun. I like there to be positivity.
My sets are fun.
No firing. No firing.
There's no firing on my sets. We work differently. What's
well, that's why you can't answer the
one thing I think is great is I really love to have a fun set and that people share and become close. And I think that's what's hard with the COVID situation. So like Bob's point about everyone getting together, having lunches and stuff, is that especially in a lower budget film, everyone needs to feel like a family and that we're all contributing and counting on each other. The DP is making the actor look good, and the actor is helping the director form his vision, and the producer's there to help support everyone's vision. So everyone needs to feel that they are all committed. They're not sitting in separate little clumps and they're making little clicks here and there. It is a family that needs to be created. And I think that part of the producer's job is to make sure that the departments are all interacting and that people aren't afraid to interact with each other, because at that point, better ideas form, better communication happens, better relationship between the actors and the director. So you really want to make sure you're watching what's going on. The longer the shoots, and we do a lot of international production. So we're shooting outside the country a lot. So you also have to watch for time zones. People are getting tired. Some people want to stay up late and do the crazy stuff there. So you have to make sure you're paying attention to who needs to make sure they're getting put to bed and who's making sure that they're going to wake up in the morning and who's going to make sure that they're not going to be cranky the next day. So you have to kind of manage the family to make sure that they're at their best game for each other, and that you're also, I think as a producer, your job is to make sure that people see how you need to treat each other. And so the way you treat each of the crew members around there, it sparks, everyone does the same thing. The PA should have just as much respect as the grip and the gaffer as the actor and the director. And so that then becomes much tighter of a family where people are making an actual, committing to making a film together, which I think is really important, especially when you're low budget, because you only have the few people with you that you need to count on. And like Bob's had that same DP, he can count on him. And that relationship is, he's like, Bob, give me a second. That's a crazy ask. I'm going to figure it out. But he knows Bob trusts him. And because he trusts him, that guy's going to climb a tree and figure it out because Bob's always been there to trust him. And that says a lot,
Yeah.
With crews, I have what's called, and I'm sure you do too, Harry, what's called first call. It's like, if I like you on my crew and I think you like working with me, you get what's called first call. And I've worked with the same people in certain areas, many years, many films together. and you grow, and then you've always added one or two new people that come out of school and they're very talented and they also learned previously. And one of the things is communication is important too. If somebody's becoming a real clown or a real disruption on your set, there's nothing wrong with the old take them aside and give that fatherly, and I can do that or grandfatherly advice. And one-on-one, it's okay to say, hey man, what's wrong? What's the problem? Because you're costing us time and money.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd be surprised. Sometimes they go, I'm sorry, man. I want us to have a good time, but we're running a little late. Let's pick up the pace. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That was the best advice someone ever gave me. Was they said, if you see that there's something forming, head on and say, hey, I'm sensing that you're uncomfortable, or you seem agitated. What's happening? It's so much better to just cut it off right when you see it, because they may all of a sudden go, oh, I had no idea, or I was doing it, or they know they were doing it. But it's amazing that when you don't just play the passive aggressive game, just ask. Sometimes it's they release it, or they just realize they got to shut it up. And it's amazing how you can't be afraid to, don't play games, just engage and find out. It could be something really that they need help with, and you could be there, or they need
sometimes it's something at home or something like that.
Yeah, really caring about them.
They're taking it out on the set. Absolutely.
Yeah, caring and communication and listening.
Yeah, this is a collaboration
So
game.
you guys, let's talk about what you're currently working on. Tell us what we have. Some audience members are curious about what you're working on now. So talk a little bit about your current projects, Harry.
We have,
you're in Memphis. Tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, before COVID, we have a couple projects. One of them is I'm very excited about. My producing partner, Ari, is from Mexico City. So we're trying to do more bilingual type things. And we're going to do something with a very famous Mexican star, Natalia Tellez. And we're doing a feature film with her, but also a comedy series. And so those are two things that are in development now. We thought we have a lot more time to develop now because we don't have time to get into production. So it's been really kind of fun to put a pause on the world right now. We've been developing those scripts much more deeply because we've had more time than we normally do to jump into things. And then we also had some TV series, which were, again, mostly international. So they were food and travel-based series that now are all on hold because we can't even get into some of these countries, won't even allow travel inside. So it's been we're reformatting some of our television development because we're going to have to do, in the short term, more domestic type things, or in specific places. Like we can film, because of Ari's background from Mexico City, we film more in Mexico City now, or Portugal, or South America. And so we would have to pick a particular place that's open. And right now, really the only place that's open in those countries is Portugal. Spain's open a little bit. So, that's been a struggle there. But the food and travel is one of our favorite things. We love the international portion of it, and we're hoping to get that back on track.
And you just won a Webby Award, I see.
We did. Yeah. I'm really happy about that. That was really nice.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm amazed how many people, my son knows that. So when your son's impressed finally, I'm like, hey, we want a Maui Film Festival. He's like, whatever. Can we go to Maui? I'm like, yes, we can go to Maui. But when you win the Webby, suddenly his friends are like, hey, I heard Cooper's dad won a Webby. So
yeah, you're famous now.
Nice. Yeah, it's fun.
Bob, what are you working on?
Well, let's see. Opposite this seminar, screening at cons, my director is Jeff Druce, who's probably watching his movie than watching me. No, he's probably watching me. And I was one of his producers, and it's screening. So that's coming out in streaming very shortly. But it's screening at cons literally as we speak. I also have another film that we had just finished late in 2019 called Nearly Departed, which was won a comedy award at the Hollywood South Film Festival. That's also just come out under Summerhill label. Ted Chalmers is my distributor. And we got lucky. We had just finished my most recent film, Scream Test, which is it's still in edit. We finished shooting on February 7th. And we've been scampering because of the pandemic to get the post-production where we want it. I've got people in LA working on it, people in Florida working on it, people in Texas working on it. So it's, thank goodness for the internet, I guess, because that's the way we've basically been doing it. It takes a little longer. But as soon as we're done, and I hope to be done somewhere in the middle of July, we're going to get this out. And I'm not exactly sure whether to hit the drive-in theater market which I've seen a couple of independent films have done, or hit the independent exhibitor market, because you know, the chains are chains, you know, and I don't know whether they're going to go out of business or not going to, but the independent exhibitor is almost like a mom and pop shop. You know, you should support them. So when they open, make sure you get in there and see those movies, no matter what they're showing within reason. But the studios don't seem to be supporting anybody, because the studios are holding back and saying, well, we can make just as much money streaming these films as we can sticking them in theaters.
Yeah.
So my plan is to, within the next 2 weeks, to come up with a financially sound plan. And I still have 2 weeks to do that,
Okay.
but I think that brings you up to date. But wait, Ali is one of my producers. Sorry, Ali. Ali is one of my producers on COVID 2021, because while I was locked up, hermetically sealed in my house, I didn't just sit around and mope. I wrote a couple of screenplays, including COVID 2021, which is I took the COVID pandemic and kind of compared it to, remember when you and I were kids and we went to the movies and they had all those horror science fiction movies that scared us about the atom bomb, right? Giant ants, giant grasshoppers, giant leeches, giant everything. So I wanted to have fun. So I took that premise that people are scared. I mean, I'm scared, you know, I'm worried because I'm in that age where I'm supposed to die if I get it, and I don't want to get it. All right. So I decided to write this thing with fear for everybody, and yeah, some relief humor, of course. But I think that film, when it comes out, people are going to want to see it. It's also based on some space junk. And a few weeks ago, the Chinese rocket went up and I guess exploded or whatever, and the space junk almost hit New York. So it's all topical, and, you know, who knows? It's all a crapshoot, right?
Yeah. Well, you guys, I want to thank you for spending an hour with us as we talked about the independent filmmaker hacks. You provided us with a lot of valuable information. This, of course, has been hosted by Film Capital with the Cannes 2020 virtual conference. And again, we had Harry Lowell, president of Nightlight Pictures, and Bob Cook, who's a producer, BC Entertainment. And any closing comments? I think we've got approximately 3 minutes. I'd like to have some closing comments from each one of you.
Well, heck, you go first, Harry.
I just want to say that, you know, the whole point behind any of these kind of dialogues is that if you have a film you want to make, find the people who are passionate, find the people who want to make it with you. That includes your investors and your cast and your crew, and go and make it. You know, there's a lot of business to the show business part, and we talk a lot about it, and it's important. And when you get to the level of like Bob, it becomes an art form. But when you're just trying to make your first one, you just have to go and do it. And it's not, there is no magical answer that we're ever going to give you. Where you find your money, how you find your money is tricky, but putting together the right people to tell your story, if you got to believe in it, because you're going to be with it for a long time. You got to know that you're going to have to put that effort into it to make this thing finally emerge and become something that the audience wants to see. And that's why we do this business, right? Is that we do it because we enjoy it, but that people get to watch it and experience something you want to share with them. So don't give up, find a way to make it happen, and you know, just keep that vision. Don't just keep cutting and trapping it down to nothing. Make sure you tell the story you want to tell, and you know, things will grow. You'll look, Bob's career has gone to, you know, I hope to get it to that point where we're at 25 and 30 films that Bob has done. And I think that you have to keep pushing and growing and expanding, but get that first one made so you can get the experience and go on.
Exactly. There's two types of filmmakers out there, Susan. There's the ones that talk about making a film, and there's ones that make a film. Don't be the one that talks about making a film. Go out and make it. And the thing is, well, I want to have the right amount of money. That you never have the right amount of money, because it doesn't matter whether you have 200,000, 2 million, 20 million. I'm telling you, when they're watching their film, the director's sitting there going, you know, if I only had another million, I could have done that, what do you call it, shot that I wanted. If I only had another 100,000, I could have done. It's the nature of our beast. So don't be the one who is sitting around telling everybody you're going to make a film. Go make it and have fun. And we'll see you at Cannes next year.
Absolutely brilliant, both of you guys. Thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. And lovely to meet you. And good luck on your projects. And I'm sure there's lots of comments and questions still from our audience, and they can reach out to you individually as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue.
All right. Take
Thank you,
care,
Sue.
both of you.
Harry,
All right.
nice meeting you.
You too, Bob. Fantastic.
Bye, guys.
Bye.